2, 1. Hi everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the ECS Ask Me Anything series. My name is Ali Hill, and I'm a delivery consultant at ECS. I'm going to be hosting the session this afternoon. So today, I'm delighted to be hosting a partner special between ECS and GitLab. And ECS have recently achieved GitLab Professional Services Partner status, so we're really excited to be hosting this session this afternoon. So many of you will have heard of GitLab, but during this session today, we're going to be joined by Senior Solutions Architect Adrian and Channel Manager Kevin, who are both from GitLab, and they can answer any questions that you may have on the GitLab DevOps platform that they develop. And also joining us this afternoon is Emerson, who is a fellow ECS delivery consultant and is also GitLab Professional Services Engineer certified. So before I hand over to the panelists to introduce themselves, I'd like to remind you that you can ask questions by using the chat box just below this YouTube video window. We'll be monitoring the questions as they come in, and we'll do our best to put your questions to the panel throughout the session. If we don't get to your question, then please leave a comment on the video recording and we'll get back to you. So after this brief introduction, we'll dive right into about 40 minutes of questions and answers. So you can ask questions throughout the session if any of the discussion that the panel has prompts any ideas that you'd like to ask about. So let's start with some introductions. Adrian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. And yeah, just first of all, thanks for inviting us to participate in your event. That's great. So I'm Adrian Waters. I'm a solutions architect. I've been with GitLab now for around 2.5 years. 2.5 very exciting years. In that time, the company has almost tripled in size. I was initially part of the enterprise team, so working directly with our large customers and prospects, but have now switched over to be part of the channel team, so work closely with partners such as ECS across the whole EMEA region.
Great, thank you. And thanks for joining as well. Kevin, what about yourself?
Hi, yeah, thanks for the invite again, Ali. Good to be here. So yeah, my name's Kevin Franklin. I'm part of the channel team at GitLab. So, you know, my background, I've been around in the cloud native and DevOps space for some time in kind of business development and partnering roles for several years. I've been at GitLab for a year, and my mission here really is to, well, first of all, kind of build a really good ecosystem of channel partners within EMEA, and then more importantly, make those partners very successful in their GitLab activities. And I'm based in London, as you can see by the sign.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thanks for joining as well. And Emerson, what about you?
Hello, I'm Emerson Hardisty. I'm a delivery consultant working for ECS, and as Ali mentioned, I've recently been certified as a GitLab Professional Services Engineer. Been with ECS now for almost 3 years and in the industry for about 6. And yeah, that's about it.
Great. Yep, thanks to all three of you for joining. You can see that we've got a really knowledgeable panel here today in regards to the GitLab platform and the partnership between ECS and GitLab. So I'm really looking forward to learning more myself throughout this session. So let's dive straight into some questions. I'll start off with a basic introduction question, and this one I'll go to Kevin. So why might people know GitLab? Can you give some background on what GitLab does and who they work with?
Yeah, sure. So we're both in the channels team, and the channels is a fairly new thing at GitLab, but GitLab's been around for, you know, some time as a company. 2014, I think we were formed. You know, even before channel come along, there's a huge growth, huge success before that. And as the name suggests, from GitLab, we're most commonly known for, you know, for source code management. But, you know, if you haven't looked at GitLab for some time, we've become much more than that. We're actually, you know, a single app for the entire DevOps lifecycle, all the way from, you know, planning and creating through to packaging and releasing, and then all the way through to protecting and monitoring. So we really do span the entire lifecycle. We're used by about 100,000 organizations worldwide. We've got 30 million registered users, apparently. Not counted them all, but and we've got about 3,000 active contributors. So, you know, a massive kind of like, you know, ecosystem around us. Who we work with, we've got customers like UBS, Ticketmaster, Goldman Sachs, Siemens, Nvidia, just to name a few. And in, you know, kind of like in our sphere, the partnering sphere, we partner with a huge amount of companies. So, you know, all of the cloud vendors, you know, a big thing about GitLab is helping you work with your cloud of choice. So we work with AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, Oracle, DigitalOcean, some very large technology partnerships with companies like Red Hat, and IBM in general, VMware, and then cloud native companies like HashiCorp. And then we've got all of our channel partners like ECS. So that's a little bit of background on GitLab and who we work with.
That's great, thank you. And we'll be diving deeper into the platform a little bit later on, I'm sure. So one of the things that's interested me about GitLab is one of the values of GitLab being one of transparency, and the company's values are actually shared on your website. So I'll ask Adrian this question. Why do you think that transparency is important?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And all companies have their values, and they might be stuck up on the wall. But I've never experienced a company that sort of lives and breathes their values in the way that GitLab does. And there's 6 of them, as you say, they're on the website. But to me, transparency is a really key one. It underpins many of the others. So it aids collaboration, improves efficiency, helps with results. But it also it really helps with a significant impact in how we interact and work with our customers. It does take a bit of getting your head around when you first join GitLab. It sort of feels a bit sort of unnatural, but everything we do by default is public. There has to be a reason why something, information isn't made public, and the categories of information that aren't public are themselves documented and public. So there are things like commercial confidentiality, legal, security reasons, and so on. But everything else is there for all to see, and that includes how we operate as a company, how we sell to our customers, how we view our competitive landscape, and also things like our product roadmap. So that sort of the roadmap aspect is there in the public domain, and that flows down from the real high-level strategy where we're going as an organization with our product, through to planning, down to user stories, and to development release information around individual capabilities. And that sort of includes things like discussions going on between our product management team, our engineers, maybe the sales organization, but also customers and prospects. It's there to see, and we actively promote and encourage that our customers get involved with that, so they can not only see where we're going, but they can also contribute to it, and they can influence how we may develop the product. If a particular feature they think it should be done in a different way, they have the ability to sort of actively engage with us. So that transparency really forms part of improving collaboration, not only within GitLab, but also with sort of external organizations. But it also helps to build a trust relationship, because everything is there to see. Our roadmap, delivery dates. If we slip, there'll be a reason. It will be put there. You'll see it, and you can sort of justify that. So that's why I think transparency is key to me.
That's really interesting. I'm sure like employees, customers, and partners all benefit from that transparency. So on a similar topic, I'll ask Emerson this question. Given what we've heard about GitLab, what is it that you enjoy about working with the GitLab platform as a delivery consultant?
Yeah, so for me personally, I think one of the key features that I get, particularly out of that transparency, is just the sheer quality of the documentation that's available. To name an example, the one of the reference architecture pages, it contains examples of, well, basically a step-by-step guide for exactly how to provision an on-premise GitLab environment for any level of scale, based on whether you're one lone user, 5 users, 10 users, 10,000 users, 50,000 users. I know exactly what I need for any single level of that, and I can only assume that's born because of the transparency, because GitLab's own professional services team would need to know that in order to implement in some client environment. So that's definitely a huge part of it for me.
Yeah, and that's really important, because obviously as consultants, the different use cases, different contexts are really important, so that we can deliver the best solutions to our customers.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to touch on the ECS and GitLab partnership now. So as I mentioned at the beginning, ECS are now a GitLab certified professional services partner in the UK. And I'll ask Kevin, what is it about this partnership that excites you?
Yeah, I mean, it is a really exciting partnership. I'm just going to step back a little bit to talk about, how we work with partners and how, and that helps me explain how ECS fits within that. So, channel partners give us two things as GitLab. They help us expand our reach in terms of reselling and touching customers who we wouldn't normally be able to touch and reach and resell to as a company alone. That's the first element. And the second is in terms of the services they deliver around our product. And we know that because we have such a broad platform, customers often buy GitLab for a certain particular aspect of that. But it's not until services partners kind of work with customers that they can help deepen that engagement and maximize the value they get. Channels is fairly new. We had a handful when I joined. We had a handful of partners in EMEA. Now we've got over 100 just in the EMEA region alone. And one of the things that exciting partners that ECS bring is the ability to weave it into your digital trade, your whole service portfolio, right? So ECS is leader in digital transformation and DevOps consultancy, and using your expertise from complementary cloud vendors, technology vendors, you're able to help your customers get value not just from GitLab but from the whole piece of that. It's very rarely that we engage with a customer when they're just looking at GitLab. They're usually looking at it as part of a much wider use case, and that's how you can help them. In terms of, you mentioned the professional services partner status. Within our partner framework, we have the ability for both sales professionals and solutions architects and engineering professionals to gain training and accreditation. It's really important that we enable our partners to help articulate the value of GitLab better, and also be much more competent from a services perspective. So within that framework, we have one exam called the Professional Services Engineer exam, training and exam, and that's it proves that an individual's got a really good understanding of framework of the GitLab framework. And if a partner gets a certain amount of those, they qualify for professional services partner status, which is what ECS are. So yeah, really excited to be working with you. Some of the things you're doing within highly regulated industries, some of the things you're doing with enablement pods that I'm sure you've talked about in other places, is a great way of customers being able to view GitLab's value in the whole digital transformation, to use a hackneyed term once again.
No, that it makes a lot of sense. Sorry, did I interrupt something there? Or?
No. I was going to say, and that's why we're excited to answer your question. It's always good if you answer the question, isn't it? I guess.
No, that was a good answer. I think, like you said, that it's about the whole ecosystem. Obviously, GitLab has a really important part to play with that, with the DevOps platform that you offer. But being able to understand the customer challenges and things like that is what I guess ECS will bring to that partnership. So I'm going to ask Emerson. As I said at the beginning, this partnership is new, but do you have any examples of where ECS have already solved challenges for customers using GitLab?
Yeah. So there is a particular example that comes to mind of a client that we worked with in the past in the Asian gaming market. So there was a pretty large consultancy project there to modernize their infrastructure deployment architecture, and as part of that, we helped them migrate to using a GitOps approach with making use of GitLab and all of their service offerings to have a single source of truth for all of their future infrastructure deployment. So obviously a big key part of that is being a single app platform, having everything in one place made it very, well, I wouldn't say a simple task, but a lot simpler than it definitely could have been. But to get everything allowing the infrastructure deployable in a reliable, consistent, and highly automated manner. So just to put a little fun figure in there, that it was a very successful pilot, at least, that ended up reducing their deployment times from days to under an hour for entire environments.
That's great, and I'm really sure that we'll have many more successful projects together in the future. And like you were saying, the GitLab platform, the fact that there's so many different capabilities within the one platform is really important. So we're going to explore a bit about the platform itself now. So GitLab, as I mentioned, GitLab solves a range of different problems for a wide range of users. Do you have any specific use cases that you can share with us, Adrian?
Yeah, sure. And that's a really good stat to hear, Emerson. And I'll touch on that in a moment. So, GitLab, we produce a new release of the product every month on the 22nd of the month. We've done so for over 100 months in a row without fail. And every one of those releases, they're not minor, they're packed with new, capabilities and features. But we don't look to develop those in isolation. They're tied to use cases that, we've identified our reasons why customers get value from using GitLab, and so why they're likely to, subscribe with us. And we've got 8 key use cases that are, again, publicly available in our handbook. And the key ones that people know about are version control and continuous integration. But for those and for the others, really, the aim of functionality that we're adding is to increase value to customers, and that's around areas of making them more efficient in their operations, or increasing the speed with which they can do their deployments and the quality of those deployments. So that sort of ties into the experience that Emerson flagged up there. And the third key area within those use cases is really looking to help reduce security and compliance risk for organizations. So just to mention a couple of the main use cases, one is DevSecOps, and the other is continuous delivery. And I said just a few minutes ago that we deliver once a month. Well, we don't in reality. We deliver constantly. We just package up a release once a month to make it available for our customers who self-host to download and upgrade. But in terms of our SaaS platform, we're continually delivering to that platform. And so we need the same capabilities to do that as our end customers do if they're handling continuous delivery. So we're using things like canary deployments to trickle changes out into that sort of new into that new release. And yeah, I'm sure I can talk about some of the other sections a bit later, depending on what questions come in.
Yeah, I think you've touched on it a little bit here, but I think GitLab is probably best known as a source code management and also for its CI/CD capabilities. We've got a question asking what other areas does GitLab help development teams with, and I think you might have touched on this already.
Okay. Yeah, well, Kevin sort of mentioned it. Really, we go from planning, deciding what the requirements are, and working those through the actual development side of things, the continuous integration, security testing, packaging, package repositories, deploying applications, CD, and ultimately monitoring those sorts of applications in production environments. And that decision to take that route was made probably 4 to 5 years ago. And the rationale was that, if you look at a typical DevOps tool chain, it's made up of a massive different technologies and tools that have to be integrated together and then have to be maintained. And that creates a lot of complexity. It also doesn't really help with, one of the key aims of DevOps is to break down silos. If you've got different users using different tools within that chain, creating that collaboration across the whole lifecycle becomes more challenging. So GitLab set out on that sort of journey a number of years ago. And we continue to broaden and to increase the depth of functionality in those areas. And maybe just as an example, we have a very tight integration with Kubernetes. So, if you wish to deploy to Kubernetes, we have a capability called Auto DevOps that allows you to, in effect, build, test, deploy, and monitor in your production environment, all from within GitLab, without having to write any sort of complex pipeline, configurations yourself. So those are sort of some of the things that, interestingly, are really not always known by the wider community. And in terms of this sort of platform approach, it's interesting. Some of the major sort of analyst organizations, have recently started talking about this, and Gartner has coined the term value stream development platforms, or VSPD, and are predicting that from about 10% of organizations in 2020, that will move to about 40% of organizations in 2023, switching from sort of multi-point DevOps solutions to a more platform-orientated approach. And that's fantastic news for GitLab, because it's what we've been doing for the last sort of few years. I mean, one thing important to say is that we don't expect, and customers don't throw out all of the other tools the day they adopt GitLab. They will obviously start with a particular area or stages of that life cycle that are important to them. But we know from experience that over time, they tend to then look at other stages, and when the time is right, they will adopt those, which then gives them increased value from the platform.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that the Gartner study that you mentioned really sort of indicates the platform approach that GitLab have taken. And there's some links in the description of this video. And one of the links actually talks about where GitLab fits, or how it solves different problems within the DevOps and the DevOps lifecycle. So I found that a really interesting read. So I'd advise people to check that out if you've got some time. Moving on to another use case that you mentioned, you touched on the DevSecOps capability within GitLab. How does GitLab help teams in that area?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it's an area that there's been a huge increase in interest. If you're going to implement DevOps successfully, application security has to be part of it. It can't be left to the end. If you wait until applications have gone into staging to do your scanning, that's too late. But if you find vulnerabilities, you've got to backtrack. You've got to pull people out of context to look at work they did, in the past. So the whole aim of GitLab is to facilitate that sort of shift left paradigm to include security. But you also have to recognize that developers are not security experts. It's not their prime function. They're there to develop code. So you've got to balance. You want to make sure that vulnerabilities are identified as soon as they're introduced by the developer. But you also then need to give them a good workflow that they can either rectify the issues they've introduced, or hand them off to someone with more expertise in the security, security role. So those sort of two things are really important as a workflow, and that's what we're aiming to achieve. So by flagging up to a developer, if they make a change to the code, they commit a change, we will scan it for a wide range of different types of vulnerabilities, whether that's static analysis, dynamic analysis even, container scanning, dependency management scanning, secret detection, all based on just the changes that they've made. And in a lot of cases, that will enable a developer to look at it and say, oh yeah, okay, I've made a silly mistake there. I'll rectify it. It's done and finished. But if not, the ability to then sort of raise issues and so on that get triaged and picked up by the security team, we make that process very simple and straightforward. So it has the benefit of enabling the developer to move on quickly, but it also helps to clear the wood for the trees for the security specialists who can then look at things at a more strategic level, dashboards and reports that look maybe just on individual projects, but also elevated up to group and team levels or organization wide. So the scanning is really important, and we provide a number of scanners. But it's that the workflow is equally important, and so we support third-party security vendors integrating their technologies into that workflow, which is then very useful for the customers if they have a security tool of choice. They can sort of bake that into the day-to-day workflow. And the important aspect from both developers and the security teams is that all of the information for all those different types of scans and issues are reported in a consistent manner in one place. So you don't have to go looking at different tools for static analysis or dynamic analysis and so on. So that really helps with the efficiency and reduce risks of things sort of slipping through.
Yeah, and I think that, again, it helps the fact that it's all on one platform and you can do these things in the place that developers are familiar with. It helps break down those silos between teams as well, or what might have been traditional security and development teams. It kind of helps bring those closer together, which I think is really valuable. Cool. So Adrian mentioned or was it Adrian or Kevin? I can't remember who mentioned it actually, but he mentioned that GitLab offer both SaaS and self-hosted solutions. So how do you balance managing these offerings, and will you continue to support both? And I'll put this question to Kevin.
Yeah, it's okay, Ali. People are always getting us mixed up. Very easy to confuse the two of us. Yeah, so we recently simplified our kind of product offerings, and you can see, I think, some of the links down below. I think you're supposed to do this on YouTube. Point down. Some of the links you'll see down below take you to those pages. We have a free version of our product. We have premium and we have ultimate. But from day one, they've been available as SaaS or self-managed. And the important thing is that they're based on the same code base, so they have pretty much identical functionality. I say pretty much because some functions are specifically part of SaaS just because they need to be, because it's SaaS. But in terms of what the ability to use it, it's like I say, it's the same code base, it's the same level of functionality, and that is really, really important to us as people move to cloud. People are moving to SaaS, but they're also moving to their own cloud infrastructure and whatever cloud that may be, and the ability to kind of offer a self-managed version or equivalent to the SaaS version has always been really important to us. So it has been, and will be continually important, and we're all about giving customers the choice of what way to go.
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah, I was just going to add to that there is a shift towards SaaS within the market, no question. We're seeing organizations that a couple of years ago, you'd say no, they won't go on a SaaS platform, but they are now starting to do that. But there are companies that are a long way off from that, whether for geographic reasons or regulatory reasons. They want to sort of manage things themselves, and so both that sort of I think that the SaaS side and the self-hosted are equally important.
Yeah, it sounds like a sensible approach. And Emerson, as a consultant, I believe you've got experience of working with both the SaaS and the self-hosted solutions. How did you find working with both of those?
Yeah, so for me personally, I think it's absolutely fantastic that the self-managed solution is exactly what you see when you get the SaaS product as well. Even as an individual developer, in my own time, I use GitLab as my platform of choice because it's, something I'm familiar with using at work. Everything, as mentioned before, everything's in the same place. All of the tools I could possibly need to make use of, I only need one account for. I don't need to spend half of my time worrying about setting up keys to integrate all of my different services together and then managing those and making sure that none of them get out and don't accidentally publish them to my repository. But then, of course, having that same solution be familiar to me when I go and work with a client or even on our own internal projects. Yeah, the same interface across the scene. Everything's in a familiar location. It just makes everything a whole lot easier.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. And I think we've highlighted it in most of the questions that have been asked and answered, is that just that importance of having it in the one platform. It just saves a lot of issues further down the line. So I think we've answered almost all of the questions at this point. So if anyone does have any questions, then please feel free to ask them on YouTube. But I'll ask a question about the future, about what's next for GitLab, and what do you see as your focus in the near future? Are there any hints that you can drop today? And I'll ask Adrian this question.
Well, given how transparent we are, I've not got any secrets. It's all there already on our sort of direction page that you can see, and that sort of covers, you know, vision and long-term strategy as well as shorter-term releases. I mean, a couple of things, you know, worth mentioning. I've talked about the security side of things, application scanning. You know, historically, the majority of customers would come to GitLab for version control or CI, and then over time may broaden out to utilize, you know, the additional functionality. What we've seen in the last sort of year really is customers are now coming to us for security, for that sort of application security capabilities, which is really interesting and really important. So one of the key initiatives in the coming year is to, you know, double down and focus on that, that particular area. We categorize our own maturity in you know, across the different areas of our product. Again, it's public, from planning before we've done anything to sort of minimal capabilities, through to completion or complete, and lovable. And, you know, when you get into complete and lovable, we're saying that is up there with, you know, any specialist vendor in that area in the market. So there's some focus on security to move that maturity up to those sort of top levels. And then the other one that I think is interesting, a key one, capability or functionality is around OpenShift. So we already support the ability to for customers to deploy their applications onto OpenShift, or to put the GitLab runner onto OpenShift so they can do their build and testing with OpenShift. Within the next 2 months, we'll be actually supporting the deployment of GitLab itself onto OpenShift. So there's a lot of demand and interest in that sort of particular area. So I just call that one out.
And Ali, if I could come in on that one as well. I mean, you know, as Adrian said, really, I mean, if you go onto our website, we've got both our 3-year product strategy and a detailed 1-year product plan. So we can't really talk about much more about the product itself. One thing I draw attention to again, because we've seen the first phase of it, but there's going to be another one, and I'm going to point down again because my kids are going to be I'm going to be able to tell my kids that I appeared on YouTube and pointed down like that, like a real YouTuber. Is that I think it's the first link you've got in the thing is Gartner's, and this is very difficult to say. We've been practicing this all morning, but the Gartner category, which is value stream delivery platforms, VSDPs, and you'll all be saying it tomorrow. It's a new category that Gartner's kind of defining, and they produced their kind of like market outlook for this back, I think it was in December. And if you go to that link, you can actually download the full report from our website, register for it. And this is really a brand new category that Gartner. It's a big thing, right? You know, this is kind of like a precursor to Gartner having what they have is their kind of like, you know, their Magic Quadrant, which usually follows in a year's time. And this is a brand new category that GitLab's been pioneering for a long time. For a long time, we've had, you know, a single application for the entire lifecycle, and this is exactly what Gartner's defining as part of this VSDP. So I'd urge you to take a look at that, because I think that's exciting for the future as regards to a brand new category that GitLab is at the forefront of. And the other big exciting thing for me actually is partnerships. You know, we're really kind of early on in our kind of partnership journey, if you like. Like I said earlier, you know, when I joined GitLab a year ago, we had one partner in my region in EMEA, and now we've got well over 100. And you know, it takes a long time to kind of like get these things ramped up and fully moving. And we've only really started to do that with ECS. And you know, I'm really excited to what we can achieve with partners together, because you know, GitLab's already achieved quite a lot in terms of, growth and success without partners, and overlaying partners on that with their ability to kind of reach new customers, resell to new customers, but more excitingly, to deliver services around GitLab and services around the wider digital transformation pieces is that's the kind of like, I think that's the key thing to watch for the future. So that's what I'm most excited about.
Yep, we had a question in about what's next for the ECS and GitLab partnership. I think you've answered that there.
Well, hopefully, yeah. Like I say, it is fairly new. We kind of just announced it just recently, and you announced your professional services partnership status. So I think there's a lot we can offer mutual customers together.
Yep, that's great. Thank you very much. So we don't actually have any more questions left to answer. I think we've gone through them all. So we can bring the session to a close now. But I hope that everyone who's watched and everyone who's watching the recording has enjoyed learning more about GitLab and the ECS and GitLab partnership and what might be coming in the future. If you would like to do some further reading, then as we've mentioned, there are some links in the description below containing information on topics like the GitLab use cases, GitLab value framework, and the Gartner study that's mentioned that I haven't been practicing how to say its name. And also, as I mentioned, how GitLab fits within the DevOps lifecycle. So they're all really interesting articles and things to read. So I definitely recommend checking those out. On the ECS side, we've got another Ask Me Anything session planned on Friday the 23rd of April at the same time of 12 p.m. And that's with Aqua Security. So we'll be discussing more around DevSecOps in that session. There is a link to that in the bottom of the video as well, and you can set a reminder for the event using the YouTube link that's included there. So all that's left for me to do is thank Adrian, Kevin, and Emerson for joining us today and being part of the panel.
Thanks,
we really appreciate it. I've learned a lot, and hopefully that everyone who's watching has as well. And yeah, thanks to everyone who's joined us live today, and also to those of you who are watching the recording. If you do have a question that pops up later on, then feel free to put a comment underneath the video, and we'll get back to you on that. But all that's left for me to say is we hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ali.